It's day 4 on our Caribbean sea crossing. We've had a pretty frustrating night. The winds really started to drop off yesterday afternoon, so we've just had the sails flapping all night. The seas were a bit bumpy, so it was hard to kind of fill the sails and keep going. But this morning the sea has flattened off a bit more, so we are able to sail a lot better, and we are making good speeds now, between 6 and 7. The wind's sitting around 14-15 knots, and we are starting to get much more settled out at sea, getting our little sea legs on, and we've both been getting lots of sleep and eating well. Can't complain.
So we're back on our favourite sail configuration. We've got the second reef main, we have the genoa almost all the way out on the pole,
and we have the jib. It's just in the slot between the genoa and the main. I don't know if you can see it on camera here, but it's
just there,
just furled out a little bit.
Catches a little bit of wind that seems to get through the gap there, and yeah, we're making really good speed. We're doing 6 or 7 knots and the wind's maximum
15, I think.
Yeah, maximum 14-15, but it's good to be making really good ground. This is our route. This is just on our iPad of our course that we've plotted out for crossing the Caribbean Sea. We started here in Guadeloupe, and we've pretty much headed on a course of just 265, and obviously the course goes down into Panama, but instead of cutting the corner we've decided to stay out quite wide. We've maintained about 180 nautical miles off the coast of Colombia, like one for weather. Most of the rough weather seems to be, when you look at the charts, there's a bit of an acceleration zone here. The Caribbean Sea is pretty much the end of the trade wind belt where it hits the land, so it's understood that usually the seas are piling up at a really short period here, and it all kind of gets bottlenecked in and then squeezed around the corner. So yeah, there's some pretty bad stories coming around this corner of boats pitch poling and really rough weather, especially at night time. So we're on day 4 here at the moment, pretty much due north of Curacao. Obviously we're in quite light winds here. We've got anywhere between 14 and maximum 18. As we get around the corner here on day 5, 6, just here the wind starts to increase. Coming around the corner you can very clearly see the acceleration zone. So Sunday night you got gusting 26, Monday night gusting 32, and it just goes up from there. 37 gusting on Monday night, close to the coast. Yeah, so this kind of passage of crossing the Caribbean Sea in the peak of the trade wind season's got a bit of a reputation. Everywhere we've read and heard that it gets quite rough. I guess most people usually stop midway here at the ABCs, but I believe going from the ABCs around the Cape of Colombia, if you're quite close in, that's where you get the worst of the katabatic winds off the Andes and the accelerations. So we're trying our best to avoid all of that and see how it kind of works out. So unfortunately the wind has dropped off again. It's back to about 7-8 knots apparent. And we've had to take down the main. It was just flapping backwards and forwards as the boat rolls, and we've decided to just go with the twin head sails for a while. Yeah, we're still managing to get about 5-6 knots over the ground, which is not too bad, so we'll keep this one for the night time. 7-8 knots apparent, and we're getting 5.5 to 6 knots over the ground, which is not too bad. It's definitely better than motoring.
Sam is so unhappy with the speed we're doing. He started rowing now. What are you doing?
I'm getting all the friggin' weed off the Hydrovane rudder. Got a massive patch just stuck to the bottom of the rudder, and it's really hard to get off because we're moving kind of fast. So the dinghy oars is the only thing that does it.
Oh. Fuck, don't fall overboard, that looks sketchy.
It's like giving it a haircut. There's a bit right at the bottom too.
Imagine the big rudder.
Yeah, I can't get that.
Nice and clean.
Be the bar. Squeaky clean. Today's day 5. We covered about 600 miles so far from Guadeloupe. We've been motoring for most of today. Unfortunately, the apparent wind dropped down to about 4 knots. So maybe like 7-8 knots of true wind, sorry. Yeah, so unfortunately been motoring, but it's just about sunset now, and we've put the sails back up. We've got the genoa, the main and the jib in the slot, and hoping for the wind to pick up a little bit through the evening so we can speed up a bit. We're doing 5.5 knots over the ground, and yeah, about 3 or 4 days to go. The last 2 days are going to be real strong, maybe 25 to 30 knot gusts and quite big seas around this corner of Colombia, but yeah, not much else happening. Sails are flapping around a little bit. We've just got enough wind to sail. We're just trying to tweak them pretty much to stop them banging in the rolls. The main looks horrendous. It's the worst time of day to look at your sails when the sun's behind. You can see all the little holes and damages of the sail over the years. It's on its last legs, this mainsail. We have the corner of Colombia there, about 160 nautical miles, and then Panama over here around the corner, around about 600 nautical miles from here.
I'm just making some dinner. We're having pancakes for dinner.
Yummy.
I think today has been the hottest day so far. Yeah, there hasn't been much wind and it's just been sweating all day. Maybe because we're getting further south.
Yeah, and the engine's been running, so it's super hot inside the cabin.
That does not help.
Not much ventilation when the wind's coming behind.
So we're gonna have some dinner pancakes and a swim and then start our night watches.
So while we're off the coast of Colombia and Panama, we've kind of been told by a few people to just leave your AIS off, especially night time if you're a bit closer to the coast, I guess. We don't really know whether the stories are true or not, or what the go is, so we have just been trying to run it in silent mode. Yeah, I mean, better to stay away from any trouble if we can. You comfy in there?
Yeah, it's so good.
What are you watching?
I'm just watching a comedy show.
This is our new little job before we left Guadeloupe for the rougher crossing. It's much more comfortable to sleep here under the keel. Much better movement.
Yeah, it's so good. We just prop it up with heaps of pillows and then you kind of, yeah, you can lay pretty still.
Right in the center of the boat you can see the sails. And it's so much better than the little coffin in there. So we're on day 7 now. It's just in the morning. We've finally got a little bit of wind. We've spent about 3 or 4 days now with really light conditions, struggling to keep moving. But we've got about 17 knots now from the east-northeast just behind us. And we're about 2 days or 350 miles from Colón in Panama. So we're just kind of starting to bend the corner. We want to maintain about 160 miles off the coast of Colombia just to stay in good current and to stay out of the acceleration zones. So as the wind and sea state have been slowly increasing today, we've just been working pretty hard to balance the Hydrovane, to just adjust it to make sure we're steering a real nice straight course. That takes a bit of fiddling around, trimming the sails, adjusting the helm a little bit to port or starboard, and yeah, just trying to balance the boat out as best you can so you can kind of make a good average speed over the day. It's a bit more work than just switching on our autopilot, but at the end of the day it saves so much power to just have the solar panels charging all day and use no power to steer the course we need. Yeah, so we're pretty stoked with the Hydrovane and the conditions that it's steering us in. So we've just been setting our course here on the little course adjustment rope here. We've got with some electrical tape, we've got starboard and port. Pretty much to go to starboard, we've just been pulling on this, and the port to pull on this, which turns the vane to the apparent wind and goes down through its little gearing system down through here. There's a couple of settings here on the ratio knob where you can adjust for different powers and different wind conditions, and you can also extend the vane up to catch more wind in lighter conditions and tilt it back here on this this balance weight there, so you can kind of adjust it back and forward depending on how strong the wind is to reduce its activity. And to lock our helm here on the Beneteau, we've just got a bit of a homemade system with some bungee cord on the wheel, through some 8mm rope, through a little cleat and up to a cam lock here we've installed. We've got one on each wheel here as well, and yeah, depending on which way the boat wants to steer itself, we either put on a little bit of starboard or port helm just to try and balance the boat out so the vane can do its job. And the bungee seems to absorb any of the shock loading in the system, so you're not loading up like all the steering equipment too much, or the quadrant or the cables. So we found that to be kind of efficient. You can just get it tighter and tighter depending on what you want and depending on the weather. And we've found the vane to be rather happy when it's sitting vertical most of the time, just with little movements to port or starboard and a nice straight line in the wake, not You know it's wrong and the boat's out of balance when you get big S's left in your wake. But it seems to be pretty good now. We've only got about 1.5 meters and 16, 17 knots. She seems to be pretty happy. So it's about 3:30 in the afternoon on day, what day is it again?
7.
Day 7. And yeah, the winds come in pretty quick, pretty hard. We've probably got maybe 23 knots sustained now. We haven't had any gusts higher than that, but the sea state's just built so quick. It's not very high. It's only maybe almost 2 meters sea state, but the interval is super short, and they're
really steep.
The current that's here is shooting across us this way, like from our port quarter, going this way, like west northwest, and it's just crossing the waves, so it's like curling them over at the top, and yeah, it's a little bit bumpy actually. We've been surfing at around about 10-11 knots every few minutes. There we go now.
Way too far.
10.1. For the most part it's pretty comfortable, but then every now and then you're just riding the whitewash and then thrown off the back of another one. So I guess it's gonna get a little bit worse through the night, and tomorrow will be 25 to 30 knots, so it'll be an interesting run into Panama.
Embrace ourselves. Hope we don't have a repeat of the approach to Barbados.
Embrace or brace?
Brace yourself, or we have to brace ourselves. Hopefully it will not be as bad as the approach we had to Barbados after crossing the Atlantic. So it's the morning of day 8. It's been a week since we left Guadeloupe. We have about 200 miles to go, and the strong winds have kicked in. We've been getting, last night we were getting gusts up to 28. It's probably sitting around 24. And the sea state is pretty messy. It's very rolly and all over the place, and it's not really big waves, but they're quite steep. So we haven't slept much last night. We've both been pretty much up. We put the third reef in the main around 3 AM because we were rounding up a bit, and now we're just trying to figure out if we're going to make any sail changes for the last little leg down to Panama. So we just backwinded the main. We were getting really overpowered. We were surfing down the waves at like 10 knots, and yeah, the main backwinded, and yeah, it was a bit scary. So we've pulled down the main now, and we're just running with the jib out on the pole, and it's a lot more comfortable. We're not getting as much speed and a bit more in control. What do you think, Captain?
Yeah, it was getting a little bit out of control. We were on the third reef on the main with the staysail, wing on wing all night, just on the Hydrovane. We were getting gusts around 30, but a very, not a massive following sea, but it's really steep and super short period breaking waves. So we were just freight training on every wave, like surfing 10 knots, surfing 10 knots. And the Hydrovane did a good job, but it was going to end in tears if we kept going.
It almost did.
It almost did.
It was a moment of panic there.
So we packed the main away. It was a big job to rip that down while we were going downwind with about 25 knots behind us. But we ripped it down in the end, and we just got the staysail here, a little bit reefed on the pole, and the difference is like night and day. Before we were just freight training, surfing uncontrollably. Now we're kind of like popping off the back of the tops of the waves, and it's much more comfortable. It was probably going to be a rough day if we kept that up. Eventually we would have rounded up, but this is alright. We're still steering on the Hydrovane. It did a good job last night, but we're just going so fast. But it's got us comfortably now, and we're still got about 200 miles to go until we pull into Colombia. So yeah, the reputation stands. It's pretty bumpy. This was flat sea yesterday morning, and now it's only probably 2 meters, but it's just like horizontal spew, like white capping, a period of about 6 seconds, and tide running across it sideways, foaming white caps off the top, and it's only 25 to 30 knots, so I'd hate to see it in 40.
and we should be arriving tomorrow afternoon, evening. So I hope it's not going to be too wild tonight with too many squalls, and that we can, yeah, so we're getting around gusts up to 27, 28 now, and the wind is sitting at around 23 consistently.
That's supposed to be the maximum, up to 28 gusting tonight, but
yeah,
you never know with the squalls. We had a few big squalls last night.
Yeah, a lot of rain in them.
The sea state's not incredibly tall, but bloody horrendous.
Very, very steep, and just it comes and just wants to swallow you, it feels like.
But we are just on the staysail on the pole, very depowered, just drifting downwind.
Yeah, we got 150 miles to go. Hopefully it'll go quick, even though we just have the little handkerchief up. And I'm pretty excited to make it there.
Hopefully we get there and get to do the channel before it's dark.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of ships around there coming in. All the ships going in and out of the Panama Canal. We are just coming into Colon. We've had a pretty wild day with rough seas, very short period. We've had winds from 25 to 30 all day, and we still just have the little staysail up. So it's been quite hectic, and unfortunately we have to approach Colon, the Panama Canal, in the dock. And we are just coming in through the TSS. There's still a lot of waves coming in behind us, and we have to do all that in the dock with lots of ships around and dealing with this weather, and then we have to go into the marine on tie up. So hopefully it goes smooth, but it's quite stressful.
Christabel signal station, this is sailing vessel Beaver, channel 12.
Hello, Captain. Good afternoon. Go ahead. Good evening.
Good evening, signal station. Just informing you our intentions. We wish to proceed inbound to Shelter Bay Marina. Our ETA at the breakwall is about midnight.
Okay, Captain. When you are 2 miles away from breakwater entrance, call me again.
Copy.
Current relative speed to be 12 minutes.
Right, bro. Need the word number of the one club.
Pacific.
Phew.
Pretty exciting.
Cheers.